What is the current state of go-to-market in B2B SaaS companies in 2024? I'm using Iconic's data for this report. They ran the state of go-to-market in 2024 study, which is incredible. So kudos for setting this up. I'm going to link to the full report in the comments so that you can do your own run drive if you want. But I'm going to kind of pinpoint some of the specific metrics and observations that I have from here. If you're not familiar with Iconic for some reason, they are one of the largest investment management firms with over an $80 billion fund, and they have invested in some of the largest and most prominent companies on the planet, such as 1Password, Airbnb, Airtable. They have Calendly, Campaign Monitor, Datadog, DeepL. You see so many familiar logos that it's just hard to go through that. Fastly, 5trend, 5logs, GoFundMe, Flipkart, it's just an endless list of successful logos and unicorn companies in their portfolio. So this report that you're looking into is not necessarily focused merely and solely on their portfolio companies. They've used some of them and some additional companies as well to draw inspiration and kind of recap the state of go-to-market. So just want to mention, they've gone through, I believe, 150 different companies. So they've consolidated different metrics. The report is data was published end of June this year, ran in April of 2024, and has also compared in some cases with March 2023, which was their last annual report that we're going to dive in. So without further ado, let's jump in. This is their report, and again, I'm going to link it into the comments. 38 pages. We're not going to dive super deep into all of that. I just want to pinpoint specific scenarios. They have an executive summary first, which is pretty helpful, and I plan to kind of wrap up with this one. Prior to that, some metrics that are important. First off, their analytics team. Again, kudos for the research. We're going to jump right in, but I definitely want to say great job and something that we can all refer to. Some of the data sources and used. So what we want to do in terms of firmographics. So Iconic is based on the West Coast, even though they invest kind of globally, or at least most of the states. 35% of the companies are the West Coast. Some are distributed. There's some South and Northeast equally. There is 12% non-US, which again is also important, and about 10% Midwest. So about a third of the companies are West. 12% are non-US, and the rest are either distributed or dispersed across different portions of the states. In terms of sales motions, we have top-down and hybrid. There is a little bit of bottom-up, so that's something that we have to consider. The size of the companies is not really that much bottom-up in terms of the sales motion, but we can still revise different aspects and different segments of companies here in that specific report. There's ARR scale, year-over-year ARR growth rate, so we can see that high growth is definitely kind of not as common this time. In different sectors, primarily horizontal SaaS. There's some vertical SaaS, infrastructure, and fintech at the end. So pretty great breakdown. Again, I'm going to wrap up with their executive summary and their recaps. But prior to that, we're just going to move into some of the actual metrics and analyze the data in a raw format before moving there. So past year, top quartile ARR growth has accelerated for companies. So no surprises here. Sales has been down for most companies and most businesses out there due to macroeconomic changes and different environments in the space. We have a breakdown for different companies, sub 25 million in annual recurring revenue, 25 to 100 million, 100 to 200, and 200 plus. So what we see here for sure is that smaller companies definitely saw drop in ARR growth, even though ARR growth is still happening for smaller companies in that market size. So, they're still above 100%, even though, again, others are still growing, just not really with the same velocity and the same pacing. So just important to know that smaller companies are still faster growth and still accelerating fast, but the drop there is most notable compared to all of the others. So smaller companies have been hit hard here in that case. Now, new logo velocity has slowed here, even though smaller companies are kind of more successful. What does that mean? Closing new logos and especially kind of popular brands and stuff. That has been reduced a bit, especially for larger companies. We have a drop from 20 to 10%. 100 to 200 million, 65 to 50, and 225 to 15%. New logos for small companies is going up. Now, part of that is the agility of smaller companies, the ability to be more flexible, the massive go-to-market penetration. Part of that are probably product-led growth. And it's just whenever you have certain penetration, especially over $100 million, you probably already have a pretty decent chunk and kind of percentage and breakdown of different logos closed. So it's harder to just incrementally grow percentage-wise significantly. So it's kind of something that we can keep in mind. The other thing is that in a tough economy, companies making over $100 million are already more or less better recognized. So business leaders are already aware of that brand, aware of the company. I'm going to mention that a bit further too. But that also means that if they want to purchase, they would purchase anyways. If they don't, They don't really need convincing. They don't need to meet a new salesperson, sales rep, or kind of go to an event. They are already familiar with the solution. It's just not the solution for them, or not the right time, or it's too expensive. So it's not a new brand popping up with, hey, yes, I haven't heard that. Sounds like a great product. We should integrate internally, right? So it's different dynamics with more familiar companies and businesses out there. Net dollar retention with ARR growth are going down, especially for larger companies. Now, one of the observations here is, again, dollar retention is down, meaning that retaining existing customers or, churn rate is going up in a sense. And it's kind of something that we see across different companies. And companies sub 200 million ARR are taking a pretty big hit here. My assumption is, and again, the difference isn't that broad, to be honest. I mean, we have 9% here down from 190 to 110, 7% here, 10% here, and 2% here. So that's obviously lower, but it's also not like dramatically lower is kind of what I want to say. So yeah, definitely kind of something to consider, but less recognized companies are probably facing more scrutiny because the combination of cost comparison versus not really a logo that we can brag about or craft strategic partnerships or something else. Now, LTV versus CAC ratio and the net magic number have declined. That's no surprise here that both are going down. And it's something that we just kind of have to consider here. Sales and marketing productivity as well, with the exception of 200 million ARR companies. We have net ARR going down in different kind of paradigms. And the productivity is down except for the kind of larger companies. And kind of one of the reports from Iconic here, again, kudos for the great report, is the increase in sales productivity for over 200 million is driven by large PLG companies with relatively small sales teams. So let's keep that into account. So what else do we have here? Again, not really surprising here. So moving on that, we have sales productivity and different metrics for account executives. Most of them are actually pretty flat, I would say. Of course, there are some bumps. For instance, horizontal SaaS and fintech have seen percentage of customers with late renewals increased by 2% in the second half of the year. So that's kind of one thing that I want to mention. We also saw that across our companies and companies I'm investing in as well. So that's something that we see. Late renewals and even some pending asks for additional renewals or so are something that we're seeing more or have seen more in 2023. It also continued in early 2024 and then kind of started to normalize by Q2 this year. But we do see that happening across every single vertical, especially fintech, and horizontal SaaS, by the way, too. So all of them have been impacted by late payments and just tough money management on their customer side. So just something to keep into account. Now, it's interesting that the sales cycles for new logos have stayed relatively flat. I'm slightly surprised with this one. What we definitely see is that the B2B buying cycles are about 50% longer, in some cases 100% longer for smaller companies. Larger companies, and again, depending on the SaaS, some of them have more tedious onboarding processes, and again, just takes about a year to ramp up a new ERP platform or so. Others are more, not necessarily product-led growth, but just easier to integrate. But it's interesting that actually the new logo closure is the same number of weeks, actually even a week lower, as compared to last year per Iconic's report. So that's interesting metrics if you're thinking of closing new logos. The pros may actually look the same in kind of other aspects. Again, there are other reports and kind of other interesting observations from their report. I'm just looking into any additional insights and any additional metrics that are worth considering and covering here on the call. Average funnels conversion rates is something that I really love here, and I just want to spend a moment on. So in terms of new leads to MQLs, marketing qualified leads to SQLs to closed won, and demo to closed won, we have two different segmentations. And again, that's comparison 2023's report versus 2024 for companies sub 100 million and over 100 million. Very interesting metric. So let's take a look at the smaller companies first, the high 7 and 8 figure companies. So what do we have here? Leads to MQLs is actually going up. MQLs to SQLs is going up, SQLs to closed won is going up, and demo to closed won is also going up. So that's something that the businesses have been seeing over 2024 compared to 2023. And let's compare it to the 2023-2024 for the larger companies. So we have 22 to 25%, which is up. MQLs to SQLs have not been converting that. SQLs to closed won has not been converting that well. However, demo to closed won has been converting better. Now, that's a very interesting research here, and here's my read on that. And again, feel free to to take a different spin on these metrics. So first thing, what we see here is the 2024 numbers are generally better in most cases, especially for smaller companies than 2023 numbers. Now, one of the things worth noting is that the drop in SaaS has started somewhere in 2022. What we saw there is first off the first signs and major cuts. We had Meta doing the first kind of layoff round. We had Alphabet and Microsoft. We had the return to office kind of paradigm and kind of lots of cultural and just kind of company size changes happening around that period of time. So the scarcity has started. The Fed has pumped the highest possible interest rate of kind of about 5.5 in 2022. So most of the scarcity, most of the fear, most of the restructuring has started mid-2022 and has impacted some of these metrics and some of that fear and uncertainty in early 2023 when the report has also been taken. Now, most of the rebuild has happened throughout 2023 and early 2024, meaning that most of the recalibration of businesses has already been completed by that time, which is why some companies have already optimized their internal budgets and processes and playbooks, even though this is still ongoing. We see that all of our kind of business requests are go-to-market strategy, experimentation as a service, unlocking new channels, kind of tapping into new business kind of verticals and metrics. All of that has been kind of going on internally, but most companies have already completed at least, let's say, 2/3 of their transformation, cutting budgets, restructuring, optimizing teams in order to be able to face 2024 with kind of easily. And that's why kind of the results in 2024 may be slightly higher, especially kind of in the first quarter. So in terms of shift of GTM strategy, another thing kind of worth discussing here is that hybrid sales has been going up, top down has been going down, and bottom up has also been increasing. So we are seeing the development of the ability to sell both to the end user and the executive once again, because right now there are different considerations and different roles and different stakeholders, including CFOs being more invested in the process and the research and due diligence compared to about a couple years ago when things were kind of running smoothly. One other thing is Iconic and kind of their report. They do see that product-led growth has been going up over the past year compared to SOG. And of course, they have an exclamation mark that SOG is important and developing a healthy enterprise motion is, incredibly important. And of course, for companies over $100 million, especially over 200 million, enterprise-led sales growth, whatever you do, you can just skyrocket with PLG. Regardless of what you think of, all sorts of unicorns, even if you're thinking of traditional PLG companies like, let's say, Notion or Asana or Slack, all of them have enterprise-led motions for the higher level contract. So do not neglect enterprise sales-led motions at all. They may not be instrumental or integral for smaller businesses and kind of more kind of brands and companies and startups, and especially PLG first, but it's integral and you cannot just completely make enterprise-led obsolete. However, it's also important to not trust entirely and just expect that SDRs are just going to close new business all the time. The buyer process is different. The buyer journey is completely different this year alone. And we are facing different considerations and different way of assessing companies and doing due diligence and research, which isn't facilitated by doing demos. So it's just kind of a different market, different research process, different type of due diligence, which is why the sales motions have already moved dramatically. One thing is that inside sales is no longer as effective. And that I would say that's also a consideration that's influenced by the moving to kind of the end of the pandemic and kind of moving to on-site and more events, but also led to the fact that FaceTime is now even more important, especially with AI outreach and kind of all the email blasts going on that's kind of incurring a ton of spam at the end of the day. So all of that combined means that inside sales is down over 50%. Right, from 56% to 24%. Hybrid is up, meaning that inside salespeople now have to go to events and dinners and kind of meet customers. So it's just kind of a different market here. So that's kind of gist of it. There's more to the full report and lots of other great stats and also kind of a map of some of their incredible companies that Iconic is investing in with their $80 billion fund. But just jumping to their executive summary and kind of readout is over the past year, top quartile ARR growth has decelerated. Now we know that for a fact. New logo velocity is low, except for the smaller companies. Like we said, they're still in growth mode, still closing new logos, still haven't kind of closed on most of their ICP or kind of the important companies of their total addressable market. So that's kind of common. Net dollar retention is down. We saw that. We know for a fact that numbers are going down for pretty much everyone else. LTV versus CAC in the net magic number have declined year over year. Now, one of the things that, and again, I'm also going to double click on kind of what Chris Walker has been discussing and kind of reviewing, also the Forrester and Gartner studies that we've been following and our own companies. Lots of companies have been investing way too much in paid ads, especially Google ads, LinkedIn ads, and even some Meta ads. So the actual customer acquisition cost and the payback ratio is intolerable. It's only going up and the return is not there. Churn rate is higher. We see that net dollar retention has decreased. So that's something we see here in the report. So churn is going up. Time to close new deals is more or less the same, but in our experience, it's actually going up as well. However, ads are expensive. In customer acquisition costs right now, we only incur the ad spend and the ad budget spent on ads. We're not incurring all the other OPEX and marketing and sales headcount and customer experience and product development and R&D and like pretty much everything else involved in making that happen and making that possible, and the added overhead of kind of adding new customers as well. So with all that combined, we definitely see that this number is going down, and primarily due to the fact that it hasn't been measured properly in previous years. Measures of sales and marketing productivity have decreased and declined for most of 2024, except for the largest companies. So sales productivity slows. We know that for a fact. Again, customers are more kind of using different paradigms. They're waiting to see how the times are going to get this year, whether it's going to get better, whether it's going to improve or not. So all that shows impact. In terms of leading indicators, which I believe are kind of more important, average cycles for new logos are the same. Again, surprising, but again, depends on the type of companies here. Across all sales motions, the pipeline coverage ratio has also stabilized. That's also important, meaning that some of the largest companies are seeing more or less consistent pipeline ratio, which is again very helpful. And again, part of that in terms of strategy, we saw the shift towards a hybrid sales approach, which again means that selling should be both to the end user and the executive in the market. So since budgets are tough, you have more stakeholders, more decision makers at play, and you have to play both hats. Primary sales motion is also hybrid. So once again, we see product-led growth and enterprise-led are kind of working in different kind of paradigms. We also see inside sales and field sales are also merging into more hybrid too. Channel partnerships, revenue as a percentage of total revenue increases with scale. Now, that's actually important. That's part of the other charts that we haven't reviewed here earlier. But channel partnerships, about 25%, represent about 25% for over $100 million ARR companies in 2024. What does that mean? That means that partnerships are extremely integral. Strategic partnerships are really hard to work. I've reviewed that in my previous podcast episode with Flippa's CEO, again, regarding their relationship and kind of a strategic partnership with SEMrush, which is successful with a lot of work and a lot of prep work and making it possible. However, for B2B SaaS, strategic partnerships are integral because it's a great way to cross-sell, bundle sell, co-organize events, and just really tap into an audience that's ready to buy. There's some trust, there's some alignment, and lots of B2B SaaS are playing together as well, right? Let's say HubSpot or Salesforce, you're going to need a cold dialing service, you're going to need a lead identification tracking kind of on the site, you need a website building tool, so you need kind of Slack integration. So a lot of these are kind of playing well together, so it's easier to kind of build a bundle of a dozen different SaaS that are cross-selling one with another, and they're also helping kind of bring adoption and awareness together. One other metric that we didn't review in 2023, we saw, and that's Iconic's report, a relatively even split between 1 to 3 year contracts. More companies shifted towards a 3-year contract in 2024. Very interesting. This year, we are seeing more confidence in consumers in re-signing 3-year contracts. That's extremely hopeful. Really, really happy to see that. And again, not expected because we still see some turbulence. However, we definitely recognize that, especially product-led growth companies, that some of the logos that Iconic has, there's some reassurance and they're well-established brands and known companies and known logos that you can trust. And for a fact that if your business exists, you're going to be using these companies. They're pretty sticky products as well. And we are seeing more segmentation across the board 2024. Account execs are becoming more specialized. Now, one of the reasons why SDR investment is kind of lower and is just kind of going down more or less is the fact that there are too many people kind of an upgraded customer support reps that are calling and kind of aligning pitches and just trying to sell a product without necessarily having the complex understanding of what this product does, how does it help a company, how does it help an industry, which is why account executives have to become more specialized. So on the one hand, we need SDRs to be moving more into an account exec role in a sense, Then account execs need to be able to help with retention and also be able to cross-train to help with closing new logos and making sure that actual sales teams are helpful, because right now self-paced learning and kind of due diligence is more helpful for most people compared to speaking with sales professionals, because they're dealing with inexperienced people who don't understand the product or don't understand the industry well. They can't compare the problems. They don't really understand the pain point. And we've been seeing that in smaller SaaS in particular and less experienced ones. But we know for a fact that there's been a transformation growing with some cuts, cross-training, transformation, leveling up and skilling up account execs and SDRs and BDRs, so that there's more consultancy towards that sales approach in order to increase efficiency rate. So that's pretty much it. Thanks again to Iconic for making that happen. Great report, some of the most prominent, most famous companies on the planet. So it's really important to understand how they play along, because their clients are kind of businesses that we also work with and kind of provide services with or do partnerships with or rely on or count on. So understanding that, we are seeing kind of more hope in 2024. We are also just heading now in Q4 of 2024, which is traditionally kind of the busiest season of the year. And kind of the main question mark here is, what is Q1 going to look like next year? The past two have been slower than usual with some turbulence going on, especially 2023, again in 2024 this year, due to lack of expectations. So now with the normalization, we are hoping for a smooth sailing for 2024, wrapping up the year and then having more consumer and buying confidence in the next year to come. So thanks for watching. If you like that, hit like, subscribe for additional reports, and let me know what sort of other data sets you want to see in the next episode.